You best believe I'm taking that money. That's wild, Lorelai. Like, that's crazy. Rugged, stoic, humble, self-aware. If you don't give that man a hammer and shut up, that's probably why I'm all f***ed up now. Hey guys, welcome back to Forties Unfiltered, where I, Brandy Lynn, process my midlife crisis out loud in real time because therapy is only an hour and that is simply not enough. Ooh, you guys. Okay, so we are up to episode 2 on Gilmore Girls A Year in the Life, where spring has now sprung, but Lorelai is the only thing not growing. Ooh. I forgot to mention in the last episode that ugly pink mug I was drinking out of was supposed to be representative of Lorelai, and this ugly red mug that I'm drinking out of today is representative of Luke, because he's on some bullshit in this episode, and we need to discuss it. As always, you can find my drink recipes, not this one because it's coffee, but my cocktail recipes, and other podcasts and YouTube videos of this podcast on fortiesunfiltered.com, where you can also write me a message or leave me a voice note and share your take on all of the opinions that you have about the pod. All right, so to catch you up on those of you that do not happen to know, in this episode, what's going on is Richard Gilmore, which is Lorelai's father, has died. And the show opens with Lorelai going with her mother to grief counseling. Now, Emily is on her same bullshit because Mama is not there to heal, obviously. She basically is using it as, like an emotional power play against Lorelai. So, like, the session becomes less about processing Richard's death. In fact, I don't think they ever even talk about the fact that Richard's dead or how either of them feel about it. I don't think they said anything, actually. It's really all about forcing Lorelai into a situation where the therapist can act as a referee that's going to, like, validate, Emily's version of events and basically say, like, she wasn't a bad mother and, like, Lorelai was just a difficult daughter. Um, at least that's what I surmise from it. And it's kind of creepy and ironic because I totally identified with this scene. When I was in junior high school, my mom once took me to a therapist, and I don't even remember what I did, but she did it because she was mad at me about something. And the therapist ended up putting me in this group therapy session with a bunch of other kids. And I remember feeling so sad and frustrated because my mom was so furious with me and I didn't even know why I was there. But like, it was a group of other kids and I joined like midstream. So the other kids were already making these like paper mache face molds, right? And the plan was obviously for the therapist to have us talk about our feelings through the face molds that we were making of our faces, which, is honestly kind of hilarious in hindsight, but we had to go wash them off of our faces in the bathroom. But to get there, we had to walk through the waiting room where my mom was sitting. And I'll never forget, she was so pissed. Like, she thought bringing me to this therapist would mean that the therapist was going to tell me like how awful I was and like fix me instantaneously. But instead, I come out giggling out of the room, like with my face covered in goop. And she just looked absolutely betrayed. Like, because the therapist didn't validate or scold me or whatever it is that she wanted, she got like really mad. And that was the end of therapy. And I never went back. So, yeah, that's probably why I'm all fucked up now. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, the therapy storyline is fine. It makes sense, but what really takes you out of what could have been an emotionally layered scene is the fact that Lorelai is literally sitting there acting like a fucking child. Like, I cannot emphasize this enough. Throughout the entire little miniseries, they have made her like completely regress. I seriously cannot recall in all 7 seasons of Gilmore Girls Lorelai ever being so petulant and immature. Like, it's very distracting to the point that you feel like they're acting. Like, you feel like you're watching people act instead of watching a story unfold. Not to mention that here again, the dialogue is clunky and the rhythm of the banter is totally off, and everyone is honestly acting circles around Lorelai. I mean, this has to be intentional or something, or like some kind of note from the director, because Lorelai has always been awkward and putting her foot in her mouth, but here she's slouched and she's just acting childish and stupid. It's such a missed opportunity because like the grief therapy scene could have been like a real turning point, like a chance to show two women finally confronting like years of hurt after, Richard's death just like cracks everything wide open, right? But like instead of exploring all that emotional terrain, the writers like collapse it into like another round of Lorelai squirming under her mother's gaze. Like, she's like shifts entirely to like this exaggerated childishness and discomfort, like her need to like win and not be handled by her mother. Like it's really frustrating because there was like so much emotional depth sitting right there and it could have been complex and raw, but like instead it's really small and petty and not in a good way. It's almost like the writers were, like, super overconfident and completely clueless at the same time. They're like, "Oh, I've written every, episode of Gilmore Girls, like, I know how this goes." So, like, instead of writing from truth, they just riffed off their memory of who these characters used to be, which, like, forced old dynamics into new situations without taking into account how women evolve with their age, you know? So there's just no world. I'm sorry, but like there's no world where Lorelai Gilmore would be still acting like this. Like by your late 40s, you're too damn over the bullshit to be pouting. And honestly, that version of her, the one who's like grown up a little bit and still figuring it out, like that would have been a lot more interesting. Because that version of Lorelai, the one who's like evolved but who's still sarcastic and finally self-aware, like that gives you room to explore something real, Like it would have been fascinating to see Emily navigating this more evolved version of her daughter and Lorelai trying to balance her skepticism about like going to therapy with like a genuine desire to show up for her mother. There's so much tension in that space, like wanting to be supportive, but like still being exhausted by the same old patterns. Like we can definitely all relate to that. That's a story they could have told, but instead they took the easy way out and like replayed the greatest hits of Lorelai's immaturity instead of like letting these two women grow into who like she should have been by now. But I digress from that because something else I found to be just incredibly lazy writing was what they did with the Suki character. So, first of all, I don't even know why, but it brings me such great joy that by the time this series aired in 2016, Melissa McCarthy was like, the actress that plays Suki, she was already a bona fide star. And so Mama was booked and busy and she was like, I'm starting a production company with my man. So like, I don't have time to be piddling around with you Stars Hollow townies. But anyway, she's not in this episode either. But for context, aside from Roy, Suki had always been Lorelai's like best friend. And the first time that we even hear her name in this entire series is episode 2. And it's really when we see Jackson at the town fair. And so Lorelai runs into Jackson and she's like, "Hey, have you seen Suki?" And he's like, "Oh, Suki couldn't come. She saw something sprouting in one of the back stairs and thought it might be edible." I'm sorry, come again? Like, say what? Like, you haven't seen this bitch in almost a year and she's down the damn street? Like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, back at the Dragonfly, Michelle is talking about needing to hire somebody. And it sounds like Suki's been on some kind of long term sabbatical or wandering around the wilderness. And then, like, the very next episode, we find out she's home, like, around the damn corner. So that's just crazy to me that she would even do that. And if you know anything about how Stars Hollow works, then you know that there have been half a dozen town hall meetings about this fair, which means for Jackson to even have a booth, there's definitely been like multiple conversations and plenty of opportunity to find out about Suki. Like, either Suki's been around and no one's talking about it, or if she hasn't, Lorelai could have just asked Jackson what's going on with his wife. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is Stars Hollow. Wherever Suki lives, it's walking distance. Like, we've seen it before. So basically, I'm saying that Lorelai is just a really shitty friend. Like a really shitty friend. Because clearly Suki is going through something and Sis is just like too busy buying ugly paisley looking grandma dresses and running their business into the ground to really care about her friend's well-being. Um But, like, back to the lazy writing once again. No one who loves food and loves her job as much as Suki does just ups and leaves for a year. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, without her best friend checking on her, asking what's going on, offering for help, anything, like, aren't you the godmother of one of her kids? Like, you haven't gone to see them at all? Like, that's wild, Lorelai. Like, that's crazy. I mean, look, I get it. The show is Gilmore Girls. It's not the Suki St. James show. Like, totally understandable. I'm not saying that they had to make her the star because she's Melissa McCarthy and she's like a household name. She's like way more famous than everybody else on the show. But like, come on. By the time A Year in the Life was filmed, Melissa was like movie star level big. Like, one name only, global recognition kind of big. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, maybe not one name only. That's like, but Melissa McCarthy, like all one word, everybody knows it, like all over the world, basically. And you mean to tell me that you didn't think to write her into the damn show until the last minute? Please. Like, nobody believes that. I've always maintained that there's more to the story, and I hope that one day somebody spills the tea because, like, you don't have an international star like Melissa McCarthy, like, intimately tied to your show and not showcase her properly unless there's some drama or you can't afford her, honestly. Um, but fine, for argument's sake, let's just pretend I fell off the turnip truck and I believe the official story that Suki's off on some culinary pilgrimage, right? You want me to buy that? Another 40-something-year-old woman with a husband and two middle school age kids just up and leaves them to go find herself? Nah, make it make sense. Like, come on. They didn't even have to be that creative because the storyline basically was low-hanging fruit. I mean, you could have just simply said she went full on Kourtney Kardashian and got overly obsessed with her kids' lives and decided everything needed to be organic and free of red dye number 7 and you know what I'm saying? And now she's like some holistic food person, like on some like, emotional healing kick. And then like boom, that would have been funny and believable and actually in character. Because like, you know, maybe Suki's still like her scatterbrained passionate self, but like she's channeling it into some like woo-woo food philosophy type of thing, and like she's driving everybody crazy and like nobody wants to eat these kale things that she's making. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like it could like the story could have been so much better than she just left. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like it's a missed opportunity. You had Melissa McCarthy, like you could have done anything with her. Like, you're killing me here. But like the show just flat out refuses once again to portray middle-aged women the way we really are. And it is just the more you see it, like you just can't unsee it. And it's really, really freaking annoying. For all of the horrible acting in this show, one of the ways that I think that they really did Lorelai's character dirty, um, and just made her completely unrealistic is how they portrayed her professionally. Like, they took the one thing that she's consistently been great at, which is her job, and rewrote it like she's suddenly, like neglectful or asleep at the wheel. So, like, basically what happens is that Michelle confronts Lorelai about the Dragonfly Inn, like having no amenities. And for once, he's not just being dramatic. He's actually right. It's 2016 and they don't even have a gym. They don't have a spa. There's no mini bars in the rooms. There's no upgrades for the rooms. There's no updates to the property. There's nothing modern to draw people in, right? So like normal Lorelai would be bothered by this. She would like obsess and question it over and over in her head. She'd like go get a coffee and walk through town in a daze. And like she'd be worrying and stressing over what to do. Then, like, eventually she'd run into somebody and they'd ask, "Hey, Lorelai, how's your day?" And she'd make up some catastrophic movie reference that the person won't understand. And then they'll awkwardly walk away and say, "Okay, see you later." And then in the very next scene, she'll pass Luke in the yard as she's walking into the house and he'll say, "Hey, what's wrong?" And she'll say, "I don't want to be insert actor from previously mentioned catastrophic movie here." And he'll be like, "What are you talking about?" And left standing there looking crazy until in the next scene, he finds her on the couch and asks her to talk about her feelings like a big girl, and eventually she'll come up with a plan and talk it out. That is literally Lorelai 101. Like, I mean, we all know. I don't. What? This series, oh my God, it's going to be the death of me. At no time would Lorelai simply shrug it off. Here again, lazy writing. Like, that isn't even true to the character that you've developed in all of these years. And it's completely unrealistic to the level of expertise of a woman in her 40s, in her late 40s, mind you, who would have spent 32 years by then in the same industry. Like, how did none of this make sense? Suddenly she's like a 40-something-year-old woman being lectured by her own employee, which it's Michelle, so take that with a grain of salt. But like being lectured by about modernization, and honestly, I would have even bought it, like for real, if they had her react as though she took it like as a personal insult. That maybe she thought that the inn was charming and whatever, and since they were still making money, and she had this little dream, she didn't want it to change, and she's missing the forest for the trees. But it's so much worse than that, because they have her act like she just like shrugs it off. She really doesn't take what he says in seriously at all. And it's crazy. I mean, like, I see what they were trying to do poorly. They were trying to say that Lorelai is frozen in time and refusing to evolve. Therefore, everything around Lorelai, including the inn, is frozen in time and not evolving. You know, it's just that it's not working. And like Lorelai's refusing to evolve, so she's clinging to like safety and sameness, and it doesn't work because it's stupid. And people who stagnate in one area are not necessarily stagnant in all areas, and it doesn't make sense that somebody would be so progressive in this one area of life constantly since they were 16 years old, because she, if you remember, she went from being a maid to the manager of the Independence Inn, and all the changes that she was making there and all of the things that they did there. You just don't get to 39 years old and then decide to start coasting, and putting blinders on. Like, it doesn't track, and it's just so annoying, because it's always been the one positive thing that she's always had going on, aside from just how she loves her daughter. And that's what makes Michelle's frustration so valid. Like, he's not just annoyed, he's restless. And he's doing what ambitious people do when they hit their 40s and realize they're plateauing, and he's married. Like, they start looking elsewhere if you don't have anything else to offer. And Lorelai picks up on this, and ooh, it makes me so mad. She already knows instinctively that Michelle is looking to go before he ever says anything. And it's even more frustrating because the writers make her just savvy enough to clock Michael's dissatisfaction by picking up on the unspoken cues, but somehow that same intuition does not extend to her own business. Like, she can read the staff, but she can't read her reviews. She can sense Michelle's frustration, but she can't take basic guest feedback and make a few simple changes. Like, come on here. Like, come on. Okay. All right. Practically speaking, Lorelai does mention some real limitations. Like, she's got a parking lot on one side, a barn on the other, and apparently a swamp or something out back. I don't know. But she's got physical barriers that kind of make it difficult for her to expand. But girl, you've had to figure it out every step of the way your entire life since you were 16 years old. Okay. And I would venture to say that women our age are endlessly creative when it comes to figuring out some shit. Okay. So, I mean, there was literally an episode a few years ago, like, I don't know, season 7 or something, or season 6 or something, where they were trying to expand the parking lot. So like, reevaluate that, girl. Like, Luke built the whole dang extension of the bedroom in your house. Like, you're telling me he can't throw up one of those panoramic gym editions with like the glass on 3 sides and a solid wall in the back overlooking the view? Like, girl, if you don't give that man a hammer and shut up, like, what? Like, boom, problem solved. Like, guests get a treadmill, you get your charm, and you get to stay competitive. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and if the parking lot's off limits, fine. What about the horse stables? those horses are expensive. Are they making you money, or are they just there to look quaint? Like, could you save on the overhead of having horses that people aren't riding and use that barn as a gym/spa space? Or if the horses really are a draw, okay, great. Then is there any space where you can add on to the barn? Because, girl, the inn only has 10 rooms. You only need like a 10 by 10 square with a treadmill and a couple of free weights and some yoga mats. Like, this is just so insane to me. And if you can't build out, build up. Like, take 2 of the rooms on the second floor, because one of the other things that Michelle mentioned was that people were complaining that there were no, not even just the amenities, but there's no upgrades. There's nothing, there's no mini bars in the room. There's no suites. Fine. So take 2 rooms off the second floor, build a third level, put 2 suites on the third level. That gives you both the premium room, option that people are wanting, and gym space. And you're in a charming little town. People won't even care that you don't have an elevator. In America, the third floor is only 2 flights of stairs, so it's fine. Like, there were dozens of ways you could have handled this, and like, none of them were impossible. But let me get down to brass taxes here and why I'm so aggravated by this episode, because I know I've been harping on Lorelai a lot, but this is Forties Unfiltered, and we talk a lot about being middle-aged, and primarily from a woman's point of view because I have a vagina. But I cannot rest, oh no, without mentioning to you what a complete and absolute doofus they have turned Luke Danes into. I mean, this man who was always this rugged and stoic and humble guy, like, goes fishing on the weekends and drives an old beat up truck, and like, he can build anything and fix anything, and he's also self-aware enough, like, to go buy that relationship book he bought to better himself when he was first pursuing Lorelai, you know and he's business savvy enough to have just a cool $250,000 to hand over to that guy to buy the house that he wanted to buy for Lorelai the first time they dated. And then he had the money to buy the entire building next door to his diner, and then another $30,000 to invest in Lorelai's Dragonfly Inn, and then like the money to gift Lorelai for the whole damn bedroom renovation. Like, and they have turned him into a complete bumbling ding dong. Like, so, okay, here's what happened. Richard Gilmore, which is Lorelai's dad, the one that died, left Luke a huge amount of money so that he could expand Luke's Diner into a franchise, which, if you've seen the series, then you know this was something that came up years ago. So Emily tells Luke about the money, and Luke is just stuttering Stanley over here all of a sudden, and he's all uncomfortable. And when he tells Lorelai, she's just like clutching her pearls, like, the audacity of her father to leave her chosen life partner the funds to ensure financial security for his daughter for the rest of their lives with no strings attached. What am I missing here? Like, their entire reaction is completely absurd. And it's equally absurd for the show to frame this reaction as like indignation instead of, well, virtually literally anything else. Because by your 40s/50s, you've lived enough life to know the value of an opportunity when it knocks, right? So like, you've scraped by sometimes, you've missed some chances in life early on. Like, you've learned what's worth fighting for and what's worth building on. So when Richard Gilmore leaves Luke that money, the natural reaction shouldn't be panic or offense. It should be a mix of humility and practicality. Like, something along the lines of, I don't love the idea of franchising, but I'll hold on to it and invest it and make it grow. Like, that would have been authentic. But like, instead, Luke acts like someone handed him a live grenade, and he's tossing the business card around to Lorelai like a hot potato, and like, Lorelai stomps around like a teenager whose mom embarrassed her in front of her friends. Like, it's so stupid. And at this age, that behavior just does not track. Do you hear me? Like, that money came with no strings attached for once. And I think we need to highlight this. The first time in the history of Emily and Richard Gilmore, they don't have to come to Friday night dinners. They don't have to pay it back. It is not a loan. There's no expectation other than grow your business, reach your highest, wildest dreams. Like, this deal does not get any better. And rather than treat it like the gesture of love that it is, or like, use it as a bridge, like between them and her parents, they turn it into like another temper tantrum. And honestly, like, it's so embarrassing. And I'm not even part of the show, and I was embarrassed. And it's not even a real show. Like, that's how bad it was. Nobody who's been through the ebbs and flows of entrepreneurship, especially in a small town, is going to spit in the face of financial breathing room. Like, Luke's entire character arc has been about responsibility. Like, the man is not stupid. He's always been cautious and practical and steady. So to suddenly portray him as if he's too dense to handle possible growth of his business is not only out of character, but it undercuts like that quiet dignity thing that they've been trying to like build around his character through the life of the show. Listen, I'm not saying that Luke and Lorelai need to even be grateful, but by now their emotional intelligence should have evolved. Like, this performative outrage is the writer's attempt to portray like integrity, but it's coming across like straight up stubbornness, and it's very unlikable. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, to say that they emasculated the guy isn't much of a stretch. It's as if Luke and Lorelai are so addicted to being underdogs that like they reject anything that might actually improve their lives or give them any sense of like security. And it's weird. And that's what aggravates the living shit out of me. Because by midlife, most people want like a little bit of ease. Like, you've earned the right to breathe, to accept some help sometimes, to stop fighting every good thing that comes your way. Like, there's nothing noble about them rejecting this money. It's just dumb. I mean, shit, give it to me. I'm sitting on 3 different business ideas right now. So, like, I could use an extra dollar or two. But in all seriousness, like, to a degree, I get it. Like, there's always a part of Lorelai that doesn't want to take the money from her parents. But at damn near 50, girl, please. If my parents were handing me hundreds of thousands of dollars, like interest free, to basically start whatever business I want, girl, you best believe I'm taking that money, and they can throw it in my face all they want to. Like, I would not even care. I mean, I'm only going to see them, what? Maybe once a month and on holidays. Girl, bye. Like, I would proudly be like, yep, sure did take the money from my dead daddy, and I don't feel bad about it. Like, and I would move right along, picking out wallpaper for my new business. Like, I could give like no shits, like what. But in all seriousness, see, here's the thing. All right, listen. The thing about stories like Gilmore Girls is that they shape how we see ourselves to a degree, right? Because life imitates life imitates art. You feel me? So when a show we grew up with revisits women that we once saw ourselves in, we expect to see our own growth mirrored in theirs, even and especially the messy parts. But like, when those characters stay stuck in the same emotional loops decades later, it feels off because people evolve, women evolve, and like, we harden and we soften, and we learn what actually matters. And at some point, art is supposed to meet us where we are. It meets the audience where they are, not pretend like we're still 16 like we were when the show first came out. You know, when art doesn't meet us where we are, it stops being a reflection and it really becomes more of a distortion. And maybe that's why the revival gets under my skin so much. Because by the time you hit this stage of life, you already know your parents might never give you the closure you wanted, right? Like, you've probably done more emotional work than they ever will. And there's like this quiet grief in realizing that healing is not a shared project. So when you see a character like Lorelai stuck on that same hamster wheel, or like Luke suddenly all daft and clueless and alarmingly unsexy, might I add, or Suki fading into the background, it's not just bad writing, it's very disappointing because like, we grew up, we did the work, and like, we deserve to see that reflected back to us. But hey, what do I know? Listen, maybe it's just me. Y'all might have a totally different take on it. And so if you do, hit me up at fortiesunfiltered.com and tell me all about it. Meanwhile, we're halfway through the series and things are not looking promising for your girls, okay? But if you want to know what I really think about Rory getting flued out to be a hoe with no benefits, then you really don't want to miss the next episode of the pod. I'm Brandy Lynn, and these are my 40s Unfiltered.